Hey everybody, how you doing? And thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed. I am on with you tonight for the Wednesday Roundtable. A few things happening in the background. A few of our hosts and our friends were having some technical issues because it is hot, and as you can see, my microphone's falling apart. It's melting. So we're having some difficulties. Normally, we're with the Liberty First Foundation on their channels and rebroadcasting through Restream. That's not happening tonight. So I said, hey, you know what? But people are used to us being on. I'll jump on for an hour. Dal Grimm has decided that he wants to join in with me.
Yep.
Dal, introduce yourself as I double check if anyone else is going to jump in.
Okay. So I'm Dal Grimm with Grimm Liberty on Rumble, and we're here for the weekly roundtable of the Liberty First Foundation, which you can join us at l1fs.us. $15 annually for the Liberty First Foundation, and we look at things going on today and through a constitutional lens. So we are an originalist constitutional perspective, which means that the Constitution is not a living document. It was written the way it was written to be understandable and to be applied in our governance. We also, as a group, do a lot in terms of not just the Constitution, but also in specific amendments like freedom of speech, Second Amendment, and basically all around education for American citizens. It's like having a civics course. Not as comprehensive as Hillsdale College, who is not a sponsor, mind you, but does offer free courses in the Constitution, and I highly recommend them if you want to be an informed citizen rather than a subject to the government. A lot of things happening. Most of the weather, and so
the weather is one of them, but I don't think that's the biggest one.
No.
The two big things I think that everyone wants or wants to talk about right now. Mm-hmm. And I was looking forward to hearing what Frank thought about it because he's usually out the loop. So it's always interesting to hear his thoughts. I think you're in the loop on this. That, of course...
Not recently, and I'll explain why in a minute, but go ahead.
Okay. World War III didn't happen.
No.
Which I promised everyone wasn't going to happen.
Yep.
So it didn't. We're not in war in the Middle East. We're not at war with Iran. We're not sending troops into Iran on the ground. No. Like for the last 14 days, that was the thing we were hearing from mainstream news media, from the Democrats, from the third parties. Oh my God, we're going to World War III. Trump, they warned us. He's bringing us into a war. It's all over. None of that's true.
Yeah.
And I think that was just massive fear mongering. I think that was all about Orange Man bad, MAGA bad, America First bad. You can't trust any of them, so vote Democrat because we'll protect you. I think that's what the goal was. And they didn't care about whether Iran had nukes or not. They didn't care about whether or not Israel was fighting. All they wanted is, let's set up the midterm elections. What do you think?
Yeah. No, I think that's correct. And it was like we were discussing the last roundtable when we were talking about vested interests in the conflict in Iran. And it's settling on definitions. Some people define war as any kind of military intervention that causes violence to another entity. And then others like myself think of war as a protracted engagement utilizing all resources over a broad area, right? So what we saw Trump do was basically the same thing that he did to Soleimani, just to a location rather than a person, right? I mean, he launched a surgical strike to basically meet the vested interest of the United States, which is to ensure that nuclear material that is weaponizable does not proliferate to the proxies of Iran. I doubt very much that Iran itself would actually use the material that it produced. It most likely would have sold it to third parties that would act on their behalf.
I absolutely disagree with that. Because Iran is the greatest sponsor of terror in the world for 46 years.
Correct.
because and then that is their main export, and their main weapon has been terrorist organizations around the world,
Right.
and they use that to fight. And the best thing for them is to be able to have a nuke that they could drop on someone, create the missile, which is what Obama and Biden empowered them to be able to do. They've
Right.
been able to do the research on missiles and ballistic weapons and drones because
Correct.
of the Iran nuclear deal.
Yep.
So then they get the missile, sell it to, say, the Houthis, give them the
Right.
nuclear armament, and now you have a nuke held by the Houthis holding the Red Sea at hostage,
But
and that
that's what I
affects the
mean.
entire world.
That's what I was alluding to, was the fact that Iran itself would not launch the nuke. It would be nuclear material that was placed in a device or in the hands of its proxies to be utilized by them.
But to
So
me, that doesn't make a difference. That's still Iran.
it's a difference in the sense that Iran, even though everyone knows that Iran is the sponsor for this and would be providing the material, Iran itself would split hairs and say it wasn't us, it was the Houthis, it was the
but everyone in the world knows
right.
the Houthis are a puppet of Iran, and there is no daylight, no separation between them. So they can say, it's not us, it's the Houthis. That's still Iran. They train them, they fund them, they make the weapons for them. That's them. And the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas, they really don't do anything without Iran's approval ahead of time. So I don't see any difference.
Okay. So that there was that event is, whether you take, Mike's view or my view, either way, the end is the same. America's vested interest is to ensure that nuclear material that's weaponizable never left the hands of Iran. We're never in the hands of Iran.
Yeah.
Right. So that's America's vested interest. Israel's vested interest was something completely different. They don't want Iran to have nuclear weapons because they know that Iran would definitely use it against them. And they are trying to establish themselves as a sovereign nation inside of this region where they've been accosted historically since 1948. So, excuse me, the fact that Saudi Arabia, Qatar, China, and Russia were all like, Israel bad, but, we really shouldn't have destabilization in the Middle East. Iran was by itself. There is no, right now, the Houthis are flatlined because of what we did to try and protect international trade in the sea lanes there. Hezbollah bowed out, which was odd, but Hezbollah was like, nah, we don't want any of this. And Hamas has been steamrolled by Israel. So Israel's vested interest coexists in the same vein as the United States, but to a more emphatic degree because of its regional positioning and how it's often perceived in that region. And I really hope that the Persian people of Iran take this opportunity to really reflect on whether they want to seize the opportunity to reestablish themselves as a Persian state as opposed to an Islamic state, or if they want to basically not use the momentum that's been given to them at all. And I wonder if there's going to be that. I don't want to see foreign governments affect regime change. I want the Persian people to decide for themselves.
Well, I think that when Donald Trump was saying that regime change is a good thing, it's not a bad thing, that's organic. Internal organic regime change is good. And seeing the Ayatollah come down would be great. You're not going to, I don't think the people in Iran trust the United States in general, because I think it was 2011, 2012, the Arab Summer, I think that was in 2011, could be 2012. Under Barack Obama, the Green Movement, which is the anti-Ayatollah movement in Iran, they tried to rise up. They tried to get a regime change. And
Yeah.
during the Arab Spring, when when Obama was trying to help the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt and in Libya, and he was all about this is a great thing for the Middle East, and he abandoned everyone in Iran and said, well, fend for yourselves. Nice that you're talking about regime change. We're not going to help you. And they got slaughtered.
Yep.
I don't know that. And even though Trump is a very different person, I don't think they trust that. And I think that with the Ayatollah not, the Iran is not pushing forward. They obviously, as I mentioned yesterday, they obviously did exactly just the bare minimum to say, no, we're fighting against America, and said, no, we're done. We don't want any of this. We're out. Stop the fighting. We'll walk away. And they did. And that means there's not momentum for regime change at this time, organically.
Right.
Am I misunderstanding that? Do you see it different?
There's been conflicting reports. I almost think that there's a schism in the Ayatollah's regime there, because there was devastation from the bombing. Right, we dropped the bunker buster or whatever, and there it localized, but it was devastating to see. And some of the Ayatollah's regime was like, no, this is not sustainable. If this is what they're going to drop on us, then we don't want any of this. But then there were hardliners that were coming out with propaganda being fed into the media for Iranians that said the damage was explosive, but it didn't really go anywhere. It didn't do anything. We're going to fight to the bitter end, and America's going to fall. We're doing just fine. So I think there's right now in the Ayatollah's regime, there's a back and forth, and usually that ends up happening. Historically, you'll see like a authoritarian regime gets hit. Some of the less hardliners will be like, better to be alive and plot another day than to be dead from something that we get whacked with that's bigger than us. And then there's the hardliners that are like, no, if we do that, we show weakness, and then if we show weakness, then we lose all sorts of trust with the people, and then they will oust us. So I think there's a back and forth there where they need to show control to the Iranian people, but then at the same time try to walk back any kind of conflict that they would actually put against the United States, where they would get more bombs dropped on them as opposed to pallets of cash. So,
well, let me ask this, because I was talking about this the last 2 days. I was live streaming on it, and I believe that the America's role in the 12-day war did not violate Donald Trump's promise to America.
No,
because he did promise when he was in 2016, when he became president, the 45th president of the United States, and in his campaigning in 2020, campaigning in 2024, and when he became president, he consistently always said, Iran cannot have nuclear capabilities. They cannot have a bomb. They cannot be capable of a bomb. He's never shied away from that, and he was always said everything's on the table to make sure that doesn't ever happen.
Right, and that goes for deals. That goes for deals, violence, and some light military intervention, which is not war.
Well, so, I understand some people say, "Well, you dropped the bomb.
You dropped the bomb. It's
like a war to me." But
but
strategic military strike, a one-off strategic military strike, isn't exactly a war. And by the way, it wasn't war when Obama did it in Yemen.
Right.
It wasn't war when Clinton was doing it all across Afghanistan.
Sarajevo.
Sarajevo too.
Yeah.
It wasn't war then. Why is it war now? Orange man bad. So I don't accept that reasoning.
Right.
I don't think he broke his promise. But what do you think?
I think in a way people thought that by him saying no more wars, that meant no more military use in a violent confrontation. And I believe that's wrong. If you're going to have foreign diplomacy with the Teddy Roosevelt idea of speak softly but carry a big stick, right? This is what Trump does. We've seen it in his first term. We saw it now. In fact, in the first 100 days, correct me if I'm wrong, but did he not blow up some Somali terrorists with a missile?
There was a couple of things that he did.
There
But
was.
he was never a pacifist.
No.
Trump has never been a pacifist. He
But
never was
I seem to
adopting that.
recall that in the first 100 days, he put out a message that said they found some Somali terrorists, found their hiding place in a cave, and dropped a missile right into them, and closed the cave on them, and that stopped a lot of the piracy in Somalia. So it's speak softly and carry a big stick, which is the foreign diplomacy that made America great during the period of Teddy Roosevelt. Now, you can argue whether that was a very imperialistic move. You could argue that Teddy Roosevelt was a very different sort of president when it came to his idea of foreign diplomacy, but ultimately he wanted free seas and America to be seen as a world power. And the only way you can get that is if you're unwilling to remove tools from the table. So, no, I don't think he broke his promise, but I do think that the messaging about, what constitutes war really needs to be discussed in our culture, because there are so many people that want to go straight pacifist. And these are the same people, ironically, that would sit there and argue with you till you're blue in the face about your rights under the Second Amendment to defend yourself. So why is it okay for you to sit there and defend yourself with everything up to and including violence, but then you're not allowed to utilize that violence against a culture of violence? That's the other thing that a lot of these Westerners don't understand. I didn't understand it until I lived overseas. People across the world live differently than us in terms of their headspace and what value life is. There is no value for human life. You can always make another one. But power is something different, and you can only exercise power if you're willing to use every tool at your disposal. And that's how most of these other governments especially think outside of the United States. We're the only ones that feff about, oh, well, if we hit government targets, then it's going to be a massive blow up. No, that's not how this usually works. Only when the government is able to mobilize the people for a cause that they think is just, or there's some sort of ideological prod behind it, are they able to actually getting their own people to go fight a war. Iranians are not willing to fight a war, not en masse. They would much rather work in the shadows and get these proxies to do their terror cells. When Trump bombed that facility, the first threat wasn't Iran's going to mobilize a national army and we're going to march across the Middle East. We're going to take out Israel first, and then we're going to move our way across Western Europe, and then we're finally going to have the 12th Caliphate, and we'll move through Iceland and Africa, and then we'll surround the United States, and then we'll finally move on them. No, what was their first threat? We will activate the sleeper cells that got in under Biden's administration.
And I think that isn't talked about enough.
Yeah.
8 million people walked through the door under stupid reasons. We had a roughly 3,000% increase in the number of known and suspected terrorists that entered into America. Yep. Under the Trump administration for 4 years, we had 13 known or suspected terrorists. Under the Biden administration, we had over 300, getting over 100 per year. And, we have people like the 8 members of ISIS out of Tajikistan that were in America for at least a year, and God knows how many others as well. So, yeah, there is a serious probability that there were individuals who came into America through the open borders, through the false asylum system of the Biden-Harris administration, that are in America right now. And this isn't meant to be racist, but where are the highest populations of Middle Eastern individuals in America. You're talking about Michigan. You're talking about Detroit, also LA and New York, Boston, and Chicago, but mostly in places like Dearborn, Michigan.
Yeah.
And there's no way to separate people who came to America for opportunity, people who came to America illegally, and sleeper cell terrorist agents. That's a real threat to America. So I am concerned about that. But I as I've said before, Trump didn't break his promise. His promise was to protect America. And anyone who thought Trump was going to be a pacifist, that he was never going to take action, you have no idea. You're not paying attention to what Trump did. And even if he wanted to be a pacifist, you don't broadcast that.
Right.
That's the easiest way to get attacked.
Yep.
So that's kind of how I see that. Now, I know Mike has bad knees mentioned. Defending yourself is different than aggression first. And some people would say what we did was aggressive or defensive. You can argue either way on that. I see there's another comment from user has been banned. Hello, user. Says the border should be like the DMZ in Korea. Then again, I see us as in a war with Mexico that we should refuse to see as one. That most refuse to see as one. I wouldn't say that we're at war with Mexico. And again, often we're talking about these things. It's not the people.
Right.
So no, we're not at war with the Mexican people. We're not at war with the Iranian people. Mm-hmm. But we are fighting governments. Governments fight wars. Governments direct their armies or their proxies, like the terrorist organizations that we see, like Hamas. So we're not fighting the people. We're fighting that government. And in the case of Mexico, we're not even fighting the government of Mexico, which is pretty non-existent. We're fighting the cartels.
Right.
Big difference. And I think are we at a war with a cartel? I think the argument can be easily made because the cartels do support slavery. They do support drugging our population and making a profit off of that. They'll sell guns. They don't care. They're some of the scum of the earth. And that's a real clear domestic threat to America and our safety and our economy. We are at war with them, and we probably should take a much more active role, especially since the Mexican government effectively doesn't exist.
Yeah. Now, I would like to address Mike has bad knees, and you're correct. There is a difference in defending yourself and using violence to do so, and then aggressing first. But what I'm saying is that people that would normally use the argument that violence in defense is acceptable, when you look at a conflict between governments, you can't just look at the moment in question in that period of time, because governments play a long game in most cases. Whether it's ours, whether it's the Chinese government, whether it's the Iranian government, UK, whatever. Governments play long games. And it's sort of like the family feuds of the Hatfields and McCoys, kind of, in the sense that it's a long-standing grudge match between a lot of these different governments. So when we're going tit for tat and we're dropping ordnance on one for this reason or another at that moment, there's also other things that have built up over the course of the historical interactions between these governments that plays into that strategy of the long game. So when Trump took out Soleimani, a lot of people were like, this is going to be World War III. See, we told you he's going to do this, and it's going to piss off the Iranian government so badly that they're going to be able to mobilize their entire army. The entire nation's going to go to war. Saudi Arabia and Qatar and the Arab Emirates and all these other Islamic nations are going to join them, and then ISIS, like they're going to have like an ISIS caliphate that's going to wipe out the Middle East. What happened?
Well, that was never going to happen. First of all, the ISIS has their they're Sunni Muslims, and Iran is Shia, so they hate each other, for one. Two, the Middle East hates Iran, and Iran hates the Middle East. Thus, they attacked Qatar, which was a big mistake on their part. So that's another example. That wasn't going to happen. You're never going to see China come in because they don't want to get in the middle of a fight. They want to win. They want to be the victor of whoever gets in the fight and loses. They want to be the only ones winning. So that means they don't get in the fight. Russia's busy with its own problems. They don't want to get in the middle of a fight. That's why they let Syria fall apart. So that wasn't true when Trump was the 45th president. It's not true today, which is part of why I said it's not World War III. It's a regional war. And the problem is how many simultaneous regional wars can exist? And if the answer is 3, the world is screwed.
Right.
1, not a problem. 2, iffy. But this lasted 12 days. I think Trump handled it as well as he possibly could. Should we more focus on cartels in Mexico than nuclear threats from and terrorism from Iran? I don't think it's a choice of either or. I think it's both.
Yeah.
I think our policy should be both because they're both clear and present threats in different ways, but they're both omnipresent. You got the sleeper cells in terrorism of Iran that reaches across the entire globe. Every country in the world has been affected by their terrorism and their support of terrorism. Mexico is more of a threat directly to the U.S. and our economy, but that's no less important and no less of a drain on all of us. So I think we should see both. And I, for one, and I know there's some of the people in the audience will disagree with this. If we were to drop a cruise missile on the headquarters, the homes of 2 or 3 of the biggest cartels in Mexico, and I would even go so far as in South America, I would sleep at night perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. And, the answer to them being, calm your asses down, stop, or we'll really obliterate every one of you. We took out all of your leadership, stop. But, they may disagree. Hang on.
It's kind of like wrapping the knuckles, Hey.
Yeah, we got Frank with us.
Heat miser, huh? Are you melting?
I don't think he has his audio on yet.
He's still trying to get the picture.
Yeah, he's chill. So we'll let him keep going until he's ready. But so my question was, should we do the same thing? And I know no one in the media is asking this. No one's in America has thought of this, but I think it's an important question. Should we treat the cartels in Mexico the same way we treated Iran's nuclear capabilities? Should we drop a cruise missile on the poppy field? Should we drop a strategic cruise missile on the leadership of the cartels like MS-13? Should we just pop those guys out? Do you agree with me, or what do you think?
It's tough to say because even though, for consistency's sake and foreign diplomacy, yes, I agree with you. If we're going to go ahead and use the foreign diplomacy tactics of speak softly but carry a big stick, you offer the deal, and you be like, look, you cartels, you're bad business for America. We don't need this here. We don't want your business. If you don't separate and get out of our country, we're going to find you, and we're going to get rid of you ourselves. Even if you go to hide back in your holes in Mexico and still try to manipulate whatever's going on in the United States, we will find the ties that bind you, and then we will follow them back to you. And then you use the stick, and you whack a mole, and you knock them in the noggin, and you say, look, we can reach you. Now, consider the deal. Stay out of our country, and we will come for you.
Well, to be fair and to make sure it's realistic, just like we will never remove every illegal alien from America, just like you can't get rid of the mafia, just like you can't get rid of all crime, we're not going to stop all the cartels and all that they're doing. I'm not in a fantasy. I understand. It's not going to be a zero-sum game where we stop it all.
Right.
But like with immigration, no one was complaining when there were 20 million illegal. Well, we weren't seriously complaining when we had 15 to 20 million illegal aliens in America. By the way, that was in the 1990s.
Yeah.
Everyone keeps quoting that number, but they don't update it for population and how many more people have come in. If you're even going by, well, it's 20 million. Yeah. And then we just got 8 million more. That means it's 28. That means we're at 30. Not that we're at 20. We're not losing 10 million a year. That's not happening. So realistically, we're at 30 to 50 million illegal aliens in America. And if we went back to 15 million, if half the population of illegal aliens left America, no one would really be worried because we wouldn't have to have every hotel filled with them. We wouldn't be spending billions of dollars on them and I'm talking about extra billions, like 2 billion on top of everything we spend already. An extra 2 billion in New York alone, similar numbers in Boston, in Chicago, in LA, to house these extra overwhelming number of illegal aliens. We don't have a purpose for them. We don't have anywhere for them to be. So if the numbers drop by half, most people wouldn't care as much.
Right.
But we're overwhelming the system, and that there's just too many. And I think if you treat, and I think Trump is doing the right thing by both action and impression. The reason why we have the number of illegal aliens trying to enter America dropped by 93%. That's because they're afraid to come here. They know that someone's going to enforce the law.
Yeah.
Great. That's
what we
action
voted
and
for.
impression. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's what we voted for. Mike has bad news. Said, I question whether Iran is a true threat given their limp-wristed responses to the times that they have been bombed.
Oh,
you know, Iran is like that guy that sits at the table, and over the top of the table, he's like, hey, we're not so bad. We'll work with you. Meanwhile, underneath the table, he's got a shiv and he's stabbing you in the gut. That's the Iranians. The Ayatollah's regime is exactly like that. They will do everything on the face to make themselves elevated and workable, right? We're not unreasonable, but we need you to submit. We're not unreasonable, but we need you to comply. We're not unreasonable, but underneath the table, they're stabbing you because ultimately they want to eliminate you as anything because you're standing in the way of their ideology. So Iran's threat is not necessarily because they overtly will roll over the entire world in a jihad that can convert everyone to Islam. What they end up doing is they end up working behind the scenes using small groups that can act independently, and essentially they learned a lot from the communists as far as this goes too, to utilize these cells to hit things like infrastructure and agitate and foment riots and chaos. And in the chaos, the stability of submission to Allah looks very tempting.
Well,
And that's how you convert people.
Well, people when they're afraid, when they're in crisis, they reach out. Very often we see around the world when people are in extreme situations, when they're in crisis, when there's natural disasters or man-made disasters, people become very religious. They reach out to God more than they usually do, and they become more devout in those crisis situations than they may have been previously. So, yeah, it's one of the things that helps to expand. Terrorism does help create more converts to all religions, wherever that terrorism is happening. So we do see that. It's an interesting conversation. I'm going to switch because we don't have a lot of time.
Right.
And I want to, again, thank Dow for taking some time to be with me today because we're normally with the Liberty First Foundation on a Wednesday, and we go for about 2 hours, but technical issues, the weather, a lot of reasons, we weren't able to do that. So Dow said, no, let's go out there and reach as many people as we can anyway.
Yeah.
So we're going to do a little bit shorter, though. I did want to mention as well that user has been banned says that reminds people Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. And in fact, he is correct. We found that a lot of the weapons of mass destruction were moved over into Syria. And that's why we didn't find as many chemical weapons as we did, because they were moved out of the country when America decided that they were going to start moving forward. Because America has a lot of leaks. One of the reasons why our attack against Iran was so good, there were no leaks. Why? We didn't tell Congress. Ilhan Omar didn't hear about it. And Rashida Tlaib and AOC and Nancy Pelosi, they didn't hear about it. They didn't know. They didn't get to leak it for whatever reasons, even just because they wanted to say Trump is he's going to start World War III. He's a warmonger. Not to say that they were on the side of Iran, but that would have been the leak.
Yeah.
And then the whole mission would have failed. So that's a whole other thing. But let me switch topics, because we said we would talk about New York City, the mayoral race, where the disgraced former governor, Andrew Cuomo, who is obviously the mainstream Democrat, $24 million that he spent on the mayoral race to bring himself back into politics after being forced out because of sexual abuse and harassment charges, investigations by the Democratic AG. So it was all Democrats involved here. He came back. He wanted to run for mayor, spent $24 million. Everyone was expecting him to win. And then this upstart, an individual who's Arabic, Muslim, socialist,
Mamdani.
His name is Zorhan Mamdani. And I think the biggest thing is he's a socialist, self-professed, guaranteed, dyed in the wool. He wants socialism in America. He wants to turn New York City into the socialist capital of America by his policies. And he won, which surprised a lot of people. I'll admit, surprised me. I thought Cuomo had it. Not because Cuomo's the best, but because he had money.
Though that's what I have questions. So, I mean, we've seen how the DNC works in terms of their primary system, right? So I'm wondering if Mamdani actually won, or if a bunch of super delegates were like, you know what, Cuomo disgraced himself pretty badly as governor, and there's really not a lot that we can do to help him get back into the limelight and be in the good graces of the people. This is not going to end well. As much as we want his money, we can't use him. But Mamdani's young, he's charismatic, he's got the ear of the people, promising free stuff like grocery stores that'll always be open and they'll be always full of food, and you won't have to pay for it. You can just walk in as a New York City resident. And so they kind of used a super delegate system to be like, you know what, Mamdani's the winner.
Okay.
And that's all we're going to say about that.
Okay. To be fair and to clarify, because a lot of people aren't used to this because it doesn't happen anywhere else in the country. And I was speaking about this last night. I was on and I was talking to my good friend John, and he asked me about ranked choice voting. Ranked choice voting is stupid.
It is.
I have many friends who are libertarians. I have many friends who are third parties. They love it because it gives them the illusion, for the most part, that they have an opportunity to win. Because it is a system that says, the person who sucks the least will win. Not the most qualified person, not the best person, not the person that people actually like. It's just whoever can rig the system the best will wind up winning. And that's what Mamdani did. He couldn't beat Cuomo he couldn't beat him in a straight up election. I mean, look at what we see in the numbers. He only got 40%. He didn't get 50%. He didn't beat Cuomo in a straight up, the first round of the ranked choice voting. No one won. And Cuomo backed out because of his odds of winning as it went further, as the votes started to get reallocated. This is redistribution in action. This is Obama's redistribution, except with money, it's with votes, which is why Democrats and third parties love this shit, because you can redistribute everyone's votes.
Yeah.
And it's stupid.
That is so dumb.
And so because Cuomo didn't rank high enough, then his votes and other votes are going to get redistributed, and that means he would never hit critical mass. So he dropped out.
Yeah.
Mamdani may never have hit 50% with the way the votes would have been redistributed, but he would have the lead. He might have even lost eventually. We don't know, because of the way that the votes would be redistributed, because no one understands how they get redistributed. Ranked choice voting sucks. It is a race to get the worst person. The person, your 16,000th choice, is the choice that's going to be running the government, not because they're good, but because they could do the math on how the votes were going to get redistributed. That's how I feel about that aspect of it. But it did not have to do with super delegates. That's something that we see in the presidential races. We've seen that in presidential and even some congressional races. We've seen Democrats use super delegates and super delegates to basically invalidate the opinion of the rank and file voters, because Democrats are authoritarian. They are completely about Middle Ages politics, that they're the lords and masters of the peons, which would be their voting base, and they don't care what they think. It's whatever they want. But in ranked choice voting, it's a little different. Go ahead.
The other thing to consider too is one of the things I remember from Alaska was that they also use a ranked choice voting system, and one of the complaints about it was that people weren't filling out the ballots correctly. They were voting for the person that they wanted, and that was it. And so if you don't fill out the ballot correctly, your ballot becomes invalid.
Yes.
So even if there was a lot of pushback against Mamdani, if you don't know how to fill out the ranked choice ballot, your vote doesn't count. So you've just been disenfranchised because of technical user error.
Or if you misunderstand how to use it, your vote goes to people you don't want it to go to.
Right.
So again, it's why there's no reason. If your person is good enough, in my opinion, if your person is good enough, they win.
Right.
If they're not good enough, they lose. Period. Full stop. I don't care about the losers that I don't want. Screw them. Otherwise, I would have been supporting them. But but Mike, they should have a voice. I'm not saying they can't have a voice. I want get more debates.
Yeah.
Invite them on to all the news stations, national, local. Invite them in. Make sure they have enough time to all of them to be heard. I have no problem with that. But that doesn't mean they all need to be getting votes on a system that I would never. I'm a Republican, so I had no voice in this. This was not an election for me. I had nothing to do with it, because New York State says, screw you. You're not a Democrat. You don't get to vote. Independent people don't get to vote.
Nope.
This is only about Democrats.
Yep.
And, in that system, I would never have voted for Landers. So why does he get anyone's votes distributed to him? I would never have voted for any of them, to be fair. Again, I'm not a Democrat, but imagine if you were a Democrat and you're like, I want Landers, and he didn't rank in the first round. So some of your votes got redistributed, and your vote for Landers now counts towards Mamdani, who you didn't want, or Cuomo, who you didn't want.
Yeah.
How is that supposed to be fair? It's a stupid system. It does not work, except if you're a third party and makes you feel good.
Yeah, it just complicates the issue. Like, a straight vote is a straight vote. You're casting your ballot for whoever is on the ballot. That's how it should be, because then your voice is being heard, because your voice, you tell people, I voted for this guy. Well, you can actually mean it, because with ranked choice, you don't actually know. Yeah, you cast your ballot for that guy, but how many of your votes actually went to the guy, like Mike says, that you don't want?
Yeah, I voted for these three people.
Yeah, do you know?
You're indecisive.
Do you know that your votes actually went to these three people because they probably went to Mamdani.
Well, in the current culture of ADHD and indecisiveness and an excuse for not having focus or knowledge, I'm not surprised they're like, I can't pick one person. Well, here's three. Pick all three. Here's 16 people. Vote for all of them. Yeah, that's not how the world works. Pick one. You win. You lose. That's it. Best person possible wins. That's it. You don't like the choices? Go out, get involved in the petitioning process, go out, find better candidates, groom those candidates, get them into the petitions, get them in front of the debates and on the news, talking to people, and have your candidate win. Until then, this is the way it works, and it works better that way than this ranked choice crap. But now we got Mamdani.
Yeah. Did you ever post your legislation for electoral selection to L1FS?
Yeah, it was up. Yeah, it was up there, and it was on. I had a website for 16 years, lost it all, and then, but I believe it's in the Wayback Machine. You can find it, but it is up, or it was up on the L1F.us website.
I'll have to see if I think you sent me a copy too. I think I'll have to find my copy and repost it. If you're interested in seeing what it would be like to actually have a voice, then you need to look at some of Voss's legislation that he wrote to promote candidacy that makes the party system not fair per se, but consistent. So if you get 10% of the vote, you get in front of the cameras.
Yeah.
Like that's it. You get 10% of the vote, you get in front of the camera. It's very simple. Yeah. What states like New York have done is they've legitimately ripped away your voice because they only want you to be able to vote for two parties. And in New York, in a state like New York State, they're the same party. Republicans are just captured opposition.
I wouldn't say that. I would say that
in the majority,
the GOP is
in the majority.
Happy. They're happy with the situation.
They're captured.
No, I wouldn't say captured.
The party leadership, the GOP, is captured.
I wouldn't say that. I would say that they're comfortable knowing that they're the number two power in the state, that they don't have to work hard to maintain that, and they can raise their money, they can have their events, and they can look good and possibly use leverage of their races, individual races, to try and get higher in the party. But they don't have to do a whole lot for all of that.
No,
as opposed to other states, as opposed to actually having to win. They don't have to do that. So I think they're far too comfortable. I don't think they're captured. It's just they're happy not fighting.
It's a gilded cage. I see the way that Fred Akshar works with Donald Lapardo.
Okay, well, that's local politics. And you know what, Fred? I'm still not overly happy with Fred as a politician. And that's not personal, Fred. I know you confuse it sometimes. This is professional. I don't agree with a lot of his politics lately.
No, I don't either. And
initially I did. Now, no.
I met him once. He was here where I live, and I met him once. And I asked him a couple of questions, and he had the right answers, but he never acted on any of them. And when he started going through and actually working it's not working with the Democrats that's the issue. What is the problem is that instead of holding to principle and actually working out a deal with the Democrats, he was very comfortable, as you put it, getting higher up in the GOP because of his connections with the Democrats. And so he was
going to.
So
he thought he was going to move up the rank.
He gets a lot of privileges, even as an elected sheriff. here. So
Well, no, the stuff I can say publicly. Fred started off, by the way, folks, you probably don't know what we're talking about. We're talking about Southern Tier New York politics.
Yeah.
We're talking about a former New York State Senator, Fred Akshar, who I personally know. And I've covered him before on the program. I've done interviews with him before on the program. He knows me very well. He knows me personally. And I'm not revealing anything that I haven't said publicly, both to his face as well as at public events. So this isn't a surprise. Fred started off as a darling of the GOP in central New York. And then he changed in terms of his politics and his approach. And he stopped being the darling of the GOP. He stopped being a rising star. And now he's a sheriff instead of a senator, a state senator, or a state assemblyman. He's now a sheriff. That says something. That tells you about what happened with the politics and how well he played the politics. But that's upstate New York politics. To answer another thing, a lot of people may not be aware. I should have videos on this. I know if you search in the search engines, you can find it. Yes, I do write, from time to time, I write legislation that I've submitted to New York State and to various local governments as well. You don't have to be a PAC. You don't have to be a university. You can write a law, a proposal for a law, and you can submit it. It helps if you have either a lot of friends, a lot of popularity, a lot of friends, or a lot of money to get that actually onto the floor to vote. But you can write it, and I have several times.
And any citizen can. Any citizen can write a proposal for legislation, and you just need a sponsor to get it to the floor. So, Voss is right. Money, friends, or you find you're on a good relationship with your local senator or your assemblyman. You might be able to snare them as a sponsor and actually get it to the floor for debate.
Yeah, don't threaten them. I did that.
It didn't work.
Didn't work. I knew them personally. Threatened them to their face, publicly, politically, yelled, screamed at them.
Yeah,
they didn't have kind words back for me.
Yeah,
not that my legislation was bad. They were mad at me. I was politically. They were upset with me because I was a political pariah within the Republican Party because I'm too Republican.
Right.
So they were pissed at me because I made them look bad. But it wasn't the legislation. Legislation was great.
Yep. And it was largely based on already existing legislation that just wasn't really enforced. So you can do that. And if you want to learn how to do more things like that, the Liberty First Foundation is a good place to start. $15 a year annually, L1FS.us. Join us.
And one of the people you saw him briefly, the third guy you saw briefly for a second there, that's our good friend Frank Johnson.
One of the co-founders.
And he's part of the Liberty First Foundation. So, now you know what he looks like. And you've seen him on the Wednesday Roundtable all the time, busting my balls all the time. Yeah. So, so always happy to see that. But no, let's bring it back to Mamdani. Here's the thing. Mamdani's a socialist. I think he won, putting aside the ranked choice voting, which is stupid. Putting that aside, because that was a fluke. In November, you don't get ranked choice voting. So He has to run now. He is a socialist. He has promised to turn New York into a socialist haven. He wants to get rid of, he wants more bail reform. So he wants more criminals released from jail out onto the streets. He wants to change the law so that depending on your race, gender, sexual preference, laws will affect you differently. So it's not a blanket. It's all conditional. It's all equity, as he likes to say. He's going to suddenly spend more money than New York State has available. And he wants to spend it on giving everyone free. And he wants a minimum wage of $30 an hour by the way, the minimum wage of 15 increased the net amount of poverty in New York State. Do you think he can win?
I don't think he can win. Well, let me preface this. If everybody in New York City was like me, he wouldn't win. But they're not like me, and they're not like you, and they're not like Larry Sharp. They're the machine is alive and well in places like New York City. So my guess is that Mamdani is going to go ahead and he's going to be the winner of the race for the Democrats. Unless the Republicans can get their act together and field somebody that's very strong, like another Giuliani. That's
They got Curtis Sliwa. They got Curtis Sliwa. That's who.
Sliwa. I've seen his stuff. There are some things that I agree with, but for the largest faction, Sliwa's not going to be a runner.
Okay, I would suggest, because I've covered him now 4 times.
I've seen your coverage. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm trying to get, maybe now that it's all confirmed after the primaries, I may be able to sit down with him and do a one-on-one interview exclusively. I'm hoping that's the case. But I think he's a better candidate than a lot of people give him credit for. But, I mean, look what he's... You've lived overseas.
Yeah.
I've lived overseas. I've lived in Moscow. I know for a fact, and call it anecdotal if you want, but I know for a fact how socialism affects people. I lived in Moscow for 1.5 years. I lived in Tbilisi. I lived in Riga. I saw the Soviet Union, and I saw how people were devastated. You know, literally a 1 mile long line to walk into McDonald's. I saw that with my eyes. I experienced that. I wouldn't wish socialism on any of my enemies because I've lived it. And everyone who promotes socialism in America has never lived in a socialist nation. And I can tell you there's millions of people who come to America from socialist nations every year for the last 50, 75 years. And there's a reason why there's millions coming into America, and there's maybe a couple hundred, maybe a couple thousand that are going the other way.
Right.
There's a reason why socialism, it's a pipe dream. It always sounds wonderful, always sounds fantastic, always fails every time. Am I wrong in my assessment of socialism and the promises of socialism?
No, and we can see it even in an example before socialism even existed. If you look at the history of the United States, you go back as far as the Pilgrims, and the Pilgrims first landed in New England. What were they? They were collectivists. Yeah. They were collectivists. When they got together and they got off the boats, the first thing that they did was they pooled all of their resources and they used a central council to basically dispense everything from that and redistribute all of the resources to various people and choose who was going to do what instead of letting people self-determine. You had cobblers that were trying to farm that couldn't farm. You had smiths that couldn't be cobblers and they couldn't farm. You had people that were not suited for whatever it was that the elders were trying to get them to do. And all of the land was held in common. Nobody wanted to do anything.
Died. Yeah, there's famous stories about several of, I think John, I forget his last name. One of the Pilgrims, John something or other, was like famously noted for like failing to do any of the work.
Yeah.
To help them survive the winter, and they were dying because he wasn't doing enough work.
Right.
It was a bad system.
So collectivism like that, where you share everything alike and it's all held in common, has never worked. It's always been more efficient to have people stake a claim and then invest themselves in it. And when you get that to happen, everybody benefits. That is capitalism.
Well,
That is what capitalism is. So when the Pilgrims nearly died, one of the first things they did is they said, you know what? No more common land. Stake out a claim, do what you think you need to do, and when you have a surplus, we'll pool the surplus and we'll use that to redistribute to the town. People started trading, people started actually creating things, people invested themselves in the work. Even the laziest among them was still able to contribute something to the end, and they ended up thriving instead of dying.
Well, that's capitalism.
Right.
Here's something, and I hope someone will clip this part. If nothing else, clip this part, send it to Zorhan Mamdani. I would love to have him answer this. Mr. Mamdani, and to everyone watching, if you go to ChatGPT right now, and if you ask about every single city and state where the $15 minimum wage was put in place, you will find out two facts. One, while yes, workers got the $15 minimum wage, more people were fired. They lost their jobs. And for the people who kept their jobs, they worked less hours.
Yep.
And if you do the math, and ChatGPT will put these numbers in front of you, and you can do the math yourself. And I know that on average, workers were losing about 9 hours across each of these cities, each of these states. They were losing about 9 hours a week, but they had a $15 minimum wage. When you do the math, and you can ask ChatGPT to do this for you, so it has nothing to do with politics, it has nothing to do with political preference. They will tell you those people lost money. They didn't make money. Yes, they were getting paid $15 an hour, but they were bringing home a paycheck that was smaller. Everything cost more money, and more of their friends were fired. If that is, and given that that is a fact verifiable by any AI on every location that did the $15 minimum wage, Mr. Mamdani, you're saying $30. How is it going to be any different? And if you're going to do $30, why not $500? What's the difference? Because the argument against $500 an hour is the same argument against $30 and $15 an hour. It doesn't work.
Right.
Can he answer that? Because I don't think anyone in the major news media is going to actually ask him that direct question. And I don't think he has an answer.
Oh, if he has any kind of answer, it's going to be a deflectionary one that tries to point at programs that run in Western Europe that are funded by capitalism but are social programs. They call them commies. Oh, like Denmark. Oh, Denmark. Like, Bernie Sanders always says Denmark and Sweden. Both countries have come back and said, no, they're social programs, but we fund them with taxes that we get from people that do private business.
Yeah,
that's how that works.
See, they've been repeating that lie forever. Oh, they're socialists. No, they're not. And they will tell you that themselves. In fact, that's why Bernie Sanders no longer says it, because the governments of those countries came out and said, stop saying this. It's not true. Right. We're not socialists. We're not communists. We are capitalists, and we made the money by capitalism. And we're using the money, yes, in some social programs, but they're capitalists. Anyone who keeps saying, oh, but the Nordic states, they are capitalists. You're again, that's like saying there's only 20 million illegal aliens. You're out of date. You're quoting the old data because it sounds better. The reality isn't what you've been quoting.
And here's the funny part. Right. So those social programs that they use were voted for by the people themselves. So they're willing to pay the taxation generated by capitalist economies for social programs because they believe it's a good idea. And who knew? When the social program actually ends up failing, they've dumped it. The people have voted it so that it disappears, and they replace it with something else, or they replace it with nothing.
which is what they have been doing. Is
Right.
a lot of those social programs are being dropped because they don't work.
Right. And so instead you replace it with something where instead of giving out free food, you teach people how to grow food. Instead of giving out free clothing, you teach them how to make the clothing. These are things you take away a vice, you give them a skill, you teach them a skill, and then they improve themselves. And that's the way that we can progress. That's real progression, not what progressives say is progression. Real progression is where you drop a vice, learn a skill, improve yourself.
So, to sum up our thoughts about New York City, and
It's screwed.
because everyone's going to look at New York City and this mayor's race, and I've already heard it. I've been hearing it across all the third-party groups out there. They're like, this is a victory for third parties. See, third parties can win. And I'm like, no, Mamdani, yeah, he's a DSA, Democratic Socialist of America. He's a progressive. Fantastic. Yes. Where's the Progressive Party? Oh, yeah, it's part of the Democrats.
Party.
He's a Democrat. What race did he run under? The Democratic Party. He's just a faction in the wing. Third parties didn't win in this. No. This was no third parties were in this. He's a faction of the Democrats. So Democrats were still in this race. It's still the big party. Third parties didn't win. This wasn't a victory for them. This is not something that we should reproduce across America. We should not have more socialism spreading across America because they're running on empty lies that do not work. Not one of his policies, reducing the police, bail reform, he wants to privatize stores. None of that works. Did you know that?
What's
about
that?
The stores?
No. Well, I knew the grocery store. He wanted to.
Yes.
He wanted to take over the government. He wanted to run government-run grocery stores.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which will put other grocery stores out of business.
Yeah. You're driving the privatized ones out of business. Yes.
Well, that's the whole idea. So he's going to have one of his bright ideas. I want people to think about this for a second. Mamdani wants to go into a city. He wants to take over a location that normally landlords would charge rent on. He's going to have the city take it. So that's the government taking property from individuals.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
It's a violation.
And he's going to make it a grocery store.
And the third.
And so the people who run the DMV are going to run the grocery store. That means they can't get fired, just like at the post office, like everywhere, anywhere, anything that's run by the city. You go in there, doesn't matter how they treat you, doesn't matter what they do, they can't get fired. We all know this. So you got government workers with government union backing them up. They can't get fired no matter how badly they do, no matter how much they screw up, they're running the store. That means, do you trust people who have no reason to work and no punishment for not working? Do you trust them with your food? And they're going to run that store, and it can completely fail. It doesn't matter if it runs out of money because it's the state. So they're just taking your taxes and they're going to pay. Whether that store makes money or not, they're just going to keep doing it. He's going to have dozens of these things across the city. Okay, let's assume that it's actually good, though. Let's say you got some motivated people. They're doing a good job. They don't have a profit motive. The city will just give them more money. They will put private businesses, mom and pops, your neighbors in your neighborhood, they're all going to go out of business because they do have a profit motive. So Mamdani is going to he can give away food for free.
Right.
It doesn't matter because he's got taxpayer money. He's got state money. He's got federal money. Those will never go broke. No matter how badly they treat you, no matter how badly they stock the place, giving it away for next to free. And it doesn't matter if people get sick as hell. He'll just run it forever. And mom and pops will go out of business all across the city because of it.
So, you know, that big talk about food deserts that they had 6 months ago, 8 months ago?
Yeah.
Last year? You're going to have a food desert Because what's going to wind up happening is these government-run stores, they're going to close the mom and pops. So you're going to have no option but to stand outside one of those stores for hours waiting to get in to maybe get a rotten banana that you'll maybe be able to get a hold of in a week.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter who you complain to.
No.
Oh, the bananas are rotten. Doesn't matter. What
Yeah.
are you gonna do? Oh yeah, we'll tell his union supervisor, and nothing will happen because can't fire him. Can't.
Right. Before the mom and pops go out, though, those stores are going to look brilliant because the money that they're going to inject into the buying the produce and sourcing all of the stuff, they're going to take the prime choices for the state and put those into the store. So initially, all of those government stores are going to look fantastic, and people are going to get out of them. Yeah, for the first month. Then slowly you will see it progress and become corrupt, and then they will be as rotten as the produce that they try to sell you or give to you, because your options are now gone. The only ones making money are going to be the suppliers to the store and the city itself.
I'll tell you exactly what it's going to be like, because I've seen this in real time. I've seen this real world in Moscow in 91. And what you have is the store is empty. Stores under the socialist government in the Soviet Union, SSSR, you walk in Moscow, the capital, in the second ring of Moscow. People who live in Moscow, been there, you know where I'm talking about. I was on Kutuzovsky Prospect, 33. That's exactly where I was living. So very close to the center. And you go to the stores, 28 days out of a month, empty. Workers are in there doing nothing. But every day, workers would show up, store's completely empty. Nothing in there. Day 29, they get a delivery. There is a line 5 hours long waiting to get into the government store. They stock it up. They take about 10% of the best of everything. That goes into a back room, and, stuff falls off the truck, and it's privately sold, super capitalist, to the highest bidder. Yeah. Very corrupt, very much mafia. And that's where 10% of the best stuff goes. And everyone knows this. The door opens up, people come in, and they flood on in because it's super cheap to buy everything because the government paid for it all. Below market rates. Everyone buys the best that they can as fast as they can because you can't wait. The next person in line, if you didn't grab that can of tuna, if you didn't grab that loaf of bread, if you didn't grab it first, the next person standing right behind you is grabbing it, and they're going to take it, and you're never going to get it again.
Right.
And so everyone goes through, and all the best stuff goes in the first hour or so. And then after that, then quality goes down, 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 down. By day 30, the second day, last day of the month,
the store is empty again.
Well, it's almost empty. There's like the D rank quality of everything. And the people who, for whatever reason, couldn't get there sooner, they buy it because it's that or nothing. So you're basically buying dog food at that point. But it's very cheap, super cheap, but you're buying dog food at that point. And then the store, first day of the month, store's empty again.
Yeah.
Every month, year and a half. That had been going on for years, for decades. That's what Mamdani is going to bring to New York.
It's gonna make New York City unrecognizable. You're gonna look at it, and it's gonna look like some other place to you. You won't even recognize it as New York City anymore. You might see the landmarks, but the streets are going to look worse. The people are going to be worse off. I mean, he promises roses, but what you're really going to wind up having is a bunch of thorn bushes that are going to choke the life out of you.
Democrats say this is great. I mean, you've got AOC and David Hogg, were high-profile people. They're like, oh, this is such great thing. This is great for third parties. It's great for liberty in America. This is the best thing you could possibly have.
Yeah.
Mind you, none of these people have ever lived in a socialist country.
No.
Not one of them have ever seen what a socialist store looks like and operates like. Not one of them. They've
And not
never
only that,
experienced this.
these same people are this is how you know they're disingenuous, because these are the same people that are not going to participate in the system that you and I have to live in. They already don't.
Well, that's true. They live in walled-off communities, and they have people buying their food. Nancy Pelosi has a freezer full of ice cream, custom ice cream that she has interns going to buy for her. AOC lives in a private gated community. So does David Hogg. So, I mean, yeah. What, Bernie Sanders is a multimillionaire with 3 houses?
Yeah. Yeah, I still ask the question, like, hey, Bernie, have you divested yourself of your 3 houses to make sure that all the workers have a place to live? No? Well, gee, you talk the game of communism, but you're not living the game. Why don't you have a flat? Why do you have a house?
Hey, Patrice Cullors, the founder of BLM, created BLM so she could introduce socialism to black people.
Yeah.
Took $90 million, bought her and her family 6 mansions, got them a bunch of cushy jobs where she paid them like $750,000 a year to sit on their ass, and then retired and did nothing.
Yep.
BLM is now out of money. They got $90 million. It's been 3.5, 4 years. They're out of money. No black community has been supported or helped by the BLM money. But Patrice Cullors, a socialist who is introducing socialism to black communities, is a multimillionaire living in mansions, and so is her family. Yeah, socialism doesn't work.
No,
it's a wonderful scam.
it's a Ponzi scheme, much like we see in other parts of government. So it is now.
It is that time. I was about to say we're gonna finish up.
It's about 1:15, and we thank you, user, and Mike has bad knees. Both of you were very active in the chat tonight. All of you that were watching, thank you very much for joining us here on the weekly Liberty First Roundtable that isn't. We hope that everybody that's having trouble with their technical issues, like Frank Johnson and Mike Marshall, pray that you guys are okay, that the weather is not going to be horrific to the point where you end up melting under the intense heat or having catastrophic weather, and hope that your power is restored soon, Frank. We'll try and catch everybody next week with a more rounded roundtable and just the 2 of us going back and forth. And keep your head on a swivel, guys. I mean, you need to be sourcing a lot of different material, and don't just take what we have to say as, God's own truth. Look at the things that we were talking about. Search them for yourself. Look at different sources. And I'm not even going to tell you what source to look at, because how you need to make up your mind about finding truth. That one of the things that a lot of people try to define is, well, we have our truth, or there is no the truth. No, there is the truth. That's why when we find it, it's called a revelation, right? It's always existed. It'll always be there. We just have to find it. So go, in your talking with your neighbors, talking with your coworkers, talking with your friends, talk about the stuff. Have a discussion. Yeah, you might not always agree. Mike and I don't always agree, but we're still friends. And that's the important part, is that we have this discourse so that we can come to the truth and then move forward from that. That is true progress. Also, drop a vice, learn a skill, improve yourself, because it will help you in the long run. Oh, and during this period, also buy 10% more when you go grocery shopping, because you don't know if the price is going to go up because of the 33% less food in the world that's been happening since 2022.
See, now the last line there, he's stealing that from me from February of 2022, which was true then.
I was thinking 2021, but okay.
I was public. I know I published it.
You published it online. I was talking about it with everybody in the locality, because we were trying to get chickens and turkeys and stuff.
Okay. But we're right.
We're right.
It was true. There
And
is
it
a food
doesn't matter
fight.
who takes credit for publicizing it. It's good advice.
Yes,
You should take it to heart.
definitely. Folks, remember, like, share, subscribe. Didn't mention it before, but I'm mentioning it now. So please like, share, subscribe. If you've made it through 5 minutes or the whole thing, it's the easiest thing you can do. And it makes a big difference because it helps us fight the suppression that is actively going on right now on all of your channels. All of your favorite channels are suffering from the suppression of big social media, the internet overlords. So do like, share, subscribe. It is important. It makes a difference. Please remember, even though you didn't do any super chats, you can do a super like after the show to help out, to pay for the air conditioning, pay for the heating, pay for the lights. We would appreciate that. Or you can go join the Patreon. It's $1.50 per month. $1.50. That's nothing. But it makes a difference to me.
Deals. Next to the Liberty First Foundation, it's one of the best deals.
Yeah. And remember, on Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, always, I do my Sunday live stream. I've been doing it for 8 years now. You can always jump in. We're always happy to have comments from around the world on all the issues that are going on. And we'd love to have your voice with us at that time. But with that all said, I want to thank everybody for having been here with us. We look forward to seeing you again very soon. Stay out of the heat if you can't stay out of the sun. It's going to break soon, but until it does, stay cool, stay hydrated, and I will talk to you all again very, very soon.
Electrolytes. Get plenty of electrolytes.